I'm filming I'm filming on my 90D, and what's so cool about that, the reason I went back to this is I can see when it's tracking my face and it just picks it up just like that. It is phenomenal. Before I start this video though, I don't want to trip on my camera and fall backwards, although it would be funny to do on video. I don't want to do that. I want to plug another person's channel real quick, newer to YouTube. His stuff is absolute, his photos are phenomenal, and he uses a Canon R7, great macro stuff. I would urge you to please go check him out. His name is Chris Pitch. I'm going to leave a link to his channel right here and right down below. If you get a channel, please go look at his photos. They're absolutely phenomenal. He's newer to YouTube in the Philippines. Absolutely amazing stuff. And give him a thumbs up. Let's help out his channel too. All right. Now, I'm going to get into my regular video. Ready? Let's do this. Look how little this lens is. JonnyPink. This is a very hard video to make. I'm going to ask a couple of things. At least listen to my points before you give it a thumbs down, and my reasoning behind it. If I jump around in thought, or if you see breaks in between, it's because there are people wandering around all around, and they keep coming up because I'm trying to find little spots like this that are tucked in that are way off the beaten path, but people do keep walking up because they're taking photographs too, and it's a public place, so please bear with me. First, I'm going to tell you that no camera system is perfect. They all have their flaws, they all have their weaknesses. Nikon photos, I love Nikon color. It will always be my very, very favorite. Canon has a brighter look to it, and I like that. The blues are maybe a little richer, a little deeper, but it's a lighter color, and I really, really like that as well. Sony, the reason I don't talk about Sony is I've used Sony, and in their RAW files, I don't like their color processing. To my eyes, it's flat, and it's unappealing. Their autofocus is insane. Canon autofocus is insane. So the two are on par with each other. I'm a wildlife photographer. I don't shoot events because I don't find them challenging. I don't shoot portraits because I don't find them challenging. I'm doing it for money. I don't want to do something just for money. I've got other things that pay me money. I've got other things that I get, that I enjoy doing that pay me a lot of money, but I enjoy it. I'm a wildlife photographer. I'm watching the red-shouldered blackbird. Here, let me show you a video on that. I'm passionate about what I do, and I feel fortunate. I say this all the time. I feel fortunate to be able to share with you guys, and I hope that somebody gets something out of it. I forgot my gear so that I can show you how well the eye autofocus works on this. Way back when, James and I were out shooting, and I was able to, with my old DSLR, probably it was either my D850 or my 800, I was able to pick a piece of a tree that was floating down with that single point. I think that Nikon has made the best single point autofocus ever on their old DSLRs. So if I'm using my D800 and a bird is just perched off to the side, I will move that single point because that's all I ever use with that. Slightly off to the side, I will find the beak or the eye, and I'll get a beautiful shot. I've been doing this a long time, so I have an idea of how the light works and how the focus works. One thing about the modern mirrorless cameras is it's taken a lot of that thinking out of it. So when I go back to shooting a DSLR, it's so much fun because I have to think about every single shot. I can't let the ISO run too high, whereas with this and the Z9, just let it go, man, carte blanche, and the photos are still super clean. When I'm shooting the Canon R7, which is a fantastic crop sensor body, I can't do that. There's so much information on that little tiny chip that it gets, to my eyes, noisy. I don't like it. So I keep it low. I won't go any higher than 1,000 just to keep nice shots. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. Squirrel! For those of you that don't remember, that is from some kids movie, and there was a character that he would get distracted every time there was a squirrel. I get distracted by birds that fly and things that move because it's what I'm passionate about. So for me, I want a camera that's a wildlife camera. I left Nikon when the R5 came out because I wanted that technology. And it has been amazing. So this is what, a 2-year-old camera now? And then the Z9 tried to come out and keep up with it. Now, I'm not mentioning Sony because their stuff is fantastic. It just doesn't have what I'm looking for as far as color goes. Color to me is everything. And if somebody tells you, well, there's no such thing as color science, you can do this and it's white balance. No, that's not true at all. If I were shooting video in a controlled environment, I would take a light meter, and I meant to bring my light meter and say, hey, anybody remember what one of these is? But I would take a light meter reading, I would adjust it accordingly, I would set my grayscale then according to whatever, or using a gray card, and I would balance it. So, and you may have seen some of my other videos where I'm doing it inside, I do that every single time. Out here, I don't remember if I have this one on auto white balance or if I have it set at 5500. My GoPro, I always keep it 5500 because then it's consistent. If I was to do an event, I would kind of get a relative reading as to what the white balance was and set my camera there so that all my photos all the way through, even with the changing light, would be similar. It makes it much easier to color balance everything. Again, I don't find that challenging. I don't want to do it. I don't want that expectation. Will I do it? Of course I will. But I have to want to do it. I'm not going to do it just for money. Aside from all of that, the Canon R5 is known for a rolling shutter when you have a fast shutter speed. I've minimized some of that because I keep it in mechanical. I like the sound of it, and I really like the feel of it. It's an old DSLR feel. It's tactile, and I like that. That's why I keep this with mechanical. I do that on the R7 as well. It feels good to me. There's a gentleman watching me talk into the camera over here. As far as the Z9, it's all electronic, but I keep that shutter sound on because I like the way it feels. There's no buffer on that, so as you're shooting, depending on the speed of your card, it is fantastic. The sound sounds like it's buffering, but it's not. This one doesn't buffer either. Fantastic cameras. You spend a lot of money on these new cameras. This one I think is 36, still new, and the Z9 is 5500, 56, something like that. It's not too expensive, but then you need the adapter for both, so I've got this, figure another 150, another 150 for the Nikon one. With Nikon, not all your old lenses will adapt to the new body. They just don't work that way. Every single Canon lens that I have tried has adapted and worked spot on perfectly, even the third-party lenses like the Sigmas. They'll disclaimer it by saying that it's not supposed to, but it does. And it works flawlessly. My old 100 to 400 EF, the original, is it perfect? No, nothing is perfect, but it's so spot on, it's awesome. Sorry, a little word paste for those of you that might remember what that is. This photo right here, I was focused on the swallow that kept landing in one spot, so I was watching it, and it was picking up nesting material. It would go, take some away, come back, grab more, and so I was waiting for that launch when you get those wings that come out like this as they launch up in the air. Plane break. Okay, back to the video now. So as I was watching for this launch, those were the photos that I want. I was continually, I had the focus single point. Maybe I might be using 3D, so I was catching the eye, and it works relatively well. I knew that if I kept that single point, now if I'd been using my D800, they would have all been spot on because I knew it was going to launch, and I was just clicking away. Now I only have 6 frames a second or 4 frames a second, whatever it is with that, whereas with the Z9 you have, I don't know, 20 frames a second or something like that. Same with this, might be only 12, but it's enough. I knew that when it launched, it would be spot on. What was really disappointing is getting it home and seeing how it lost focus. Nikon was always known for doing that with video. Way back when, I used to use a Sony video camera because Sony, their autofocus was spot on. I didn't know that the Canon at that time video was spot on too. I hated Panasonic's GH whatever it was, and people would say, oh, it's just focus breathing. Focus breathing means it's out of focus. Out of focus doesn't work. There are people in professional movies that is their job, just pulling focus, watching that dial, watching their screen, and twisting it so that you get the focus, you focus rack, you rack from that person to this person. There's somebody manually controlling that. They don't use autofocus. That is their job. What do you do for the movies? I pull focus. That's all they do. And they probably make a lot of money. I didn't like those hours. I don't want to do that. So, when I started using Canon, I realized not only is their autofocus amazing, I'm filming on my old 90D right now, Nikon kind of caught up with the D780, which they had borrowed technology from the Z6, I think, when that one came out. So the two were spot on. Not perfect, but I did use my D780 for many of my videos. Then I started using Canon, and oh man, was my mind just absolutely blown up. Or was I blown away? Depending on how you want to say it, I think my mind is blown up. It's funnier. Another video I was doing down at the beach, and I was using the Z9, the Z9, and as the beach birds are moving, it was tracking the eye, and then it would jump to a rock, or then it would jump to someplace on their body. So when you're looking at photos like that in a big screen, you can see where that focus point is, because either that wing is going to be super sharp, but it missed the eyeball. If you're doing portraits, you want that eyeball sharp. If you're taking photos of somebody's at an event, you're trying to focus on that eyeball, the one that's closest to you. The new technology allows us to do that without thinking about it. I have to say, comparing the two, Canon is far superior. So as I said, please don't give it a thumbs down until you've listened to my reasoning. I want something that's just going to work. I showed you the Swallow and how it missed focus on those. It was so upsetting. Normally I don't get upset about things like that. I figure I'll just get it another time. That was one of those rare moments. Now I'm going to show you these photos that James and I took when I was here yesterday, and I took it with this. And what I like about Canon with their eye autofocus, now mind you, this is an older camera. It locked on the eyeball sitting behind the branch, and it is spot on. Look at this. It's absolutely stunningly amazing. So these two photos right here are my comparison, thinking, okay, I just can't do Nikon anymore, and maybe one day they'll catch up. I want to show you this photo real quick, exactly to show you what I'm talking about. I'm shooting right through some bushes right here. And this thing just locked right on the eyeball. That's what you're paying for this technology to do. That's why this technology is here. Absolutely phenomenal. Let me show you this photo. The other cool thing I really like about Canon is their flippy screen, and I've heard people talk, oh, this one's going to have a flippy screen. Or this flippy screen, if you're doing video, it's awesome. So let's go back to the other video right now. Now, if you're new to photography and you want a fantastic camera that is affordable, well, what's affordable? Hey, bridge cameras are awesome, man. They have some great technology in them. But the Canon R7, and maybe some of the other Sonys that are less expensive will be a great option for you too, but I can't speak to those because I don't use Sony anymore. With Canon, with a crop sensor body, with the old D500, fantastic DSLR, I wasn't crazy about the sensor in there. The R7 with the larger sensor, I don't let the ISO go too high, just like the old DSLRs. But you take the crop of whatever that lens is, so you take your 400, multiply it times the crop. In Canon's case, it's a 1.6. In Nikon's old fantastic DSLR, it was a 1.5. And I don't know what the Micro Four Thirds, and I don't use any of those anymore. I think, anyway, this is all I know, and this is all I can speak to. So you have a lot more reach. What do you want when you're out shooting wildlife? Well, reach is what you want, which is why I like that D800. You want to be able to reach out and grab that subject and pull it into you, and you want it to stay in focus. You also want as much light as you can get. So with these longer lenses, like Canon's 800mm f11, I think it is. I'm afraid of that because of that f11. There's just not enough light for me. and I'd be pushing the ISO. So if I put it on this, it would be okay, but not on the R7, and that's where I would really want to use it. So for those reasons, losing focus like that, not maintaining focus when you're watching the eyeball. And when I watch the sensor on this one, again, I'm sorry I didn't bring it, but I will show you at some point. It locks on the eyeball. If that bird turns its head around, it locks right on the back of the head. Once in a while, it'll drop down to the body when that moves away, but it is so spot on. The technology in this far surpasses what Nikon is offering. I know there are diehard Nikons fans out there that are just going to give me a thumbs down and think that I'm crazy, but this is my experience based on what I want out of a camera, how I want to use it, and what I want it to perform like. For newer shooters, again, I would recommend the R7 because it still outperforms the Z9, and I'm going to say it right here, right now. It does almost everything that the R5 does, and in a couple of ways of tracking, it does it better. So me personally, I'm going to get rid of the Z9. I'm going to go with the Canon. I'm going to wait for the Canon R1. That's one I can wait for because I have this amazing camera here. That'll give me time to buy my 800mm lens. And then when I'm using it on the R1, it should absolutely be just phenomenal. So I'm Canon, TeamCanon. I am TeamCanon now. I'm not going to entertain the idea of Nikon. When I want to shoot a Nikon, I'll shoot my old D800. It's a fantastic camera. It's every bit as sharp comparing the photos side by side. Plane break. My old D800, looking at photos side by side with the same lens, same light as everything with the Z9, my D800 is as spot on sharp as the Z9. What you won't, I mean, if you blow it up, if you start pixel peeping and increase it to say 600 times, you'll see a difference. You will. But your average person is never going to notice that. Your average person is never going to notice most of these things. So I have a fantastic camera that I love, and I'll still get my Nikon color. I'm going to keep the lenses that I have. I'll probably sell one or two other ones. My favorite lens I can't use on my Z9 because it just won't. It gives me problems. I put it on my D800, spot on perfect. And that's my old 300 f2.8. That thing is just the sharpest lens I've ever used. Second sharpest lens I've ever used has been Canon's, what is it, the 100 to 500 or the 200 to 5, whatever that one is. It's an RF lens. Oh man, that's a nice, awesome lens. It's a 7.1, so it's not perfect. And when I get the zoom lenses, 99% of the time I'm using them at their full extension anyway, so I figured, yeah, forget it, I'll just go primes and back up. I become the zoom. If I want to zoom out, I zoom out this way. If I want to zoom in, I zoom in. But I've got so much reach I can do that. Anyway, another thing is here in California, again, I said I was going to jump around a bit. Here in California, we have what's called a cooling off period, or no cooling off period when you buy a car. You go in, there's big signs that say no cooling off because you take it for a test drive and it's so cool, it has that new car smell. Better than a new car wrapped in bacon. That's a slogan from around here, or from a commercial, an insurance commercial. But there's signs that say no cooling off period because you buy something and it's exciting, it's new, and you get excited and you start driving it. And after you drive it, that's when you start noticing problems or things that just don't work for you. You don't notice them initially because you're excited about it. And I did that with the Z9. It's a regret that I have buying it. I rented it. It was phenomenal. I saw that Nikon color all over again, and the photos were sharp, but it wasn't until I started using it to track birds in flight that I noticed these are soft. It missed focus all over the place. Doesn't matter how I set it. Same with video, and I would get tips from people, oh, you're not doing it right, you're not doing it this way. With Canon, you put your lens on there, put it in video, and it's spot on the entire time. So Canon, another check mark for Canon in their superiority. It's just a superior system. And the Z8, people are waiting for the Z8. Man, I'm not going to spend $3,500 for a subpar camera. I can't say it will be, but if it's going to be a baby Z9 as people are talking about, this is a much better option. The R5 is simply a phenomenal camera. The R7 is still a phenomenal camera for what it is and the price point. That's it, man. It is just so ungodly loud here. Today I have a different video setup too. I filmed this yesterday, but I was using the GoPro, so all my audio was just absolute crap. I'm using it with one of their mods. Just not working for me. So I went back to my Canon 90D, and I'm not going to play with anything more than this. To get my exposure right on this, I'm using my histograms. I'm using a circular polarizer just to pull off the highlights, and instead of the old way using the ND filter to bring that histogram down so that I'm preserving the highlights but keeping my exposure correct, I am using my shutter speed, which I don't normally like to do, and my aperture. It's really bright out here, so I'm standing in direct sun. It's not something I would normally do, but where I was earlier, there were just people that kept coming through. I thought, I can't disrupt these folks. JonnyPink, I am going to, again, thank you if you stuck with me this long. I know it's a long explanation, but the bottom line is, Nikon, yeah, people say they've caught up, but it's because they've never used a Canon system. Once you use both, and I have used both, you will see the dramatic difference between the two. And I will say this, there's a reason that Jared Poland keeps using, he's never going to use my name in a video, so I'm not worried about it. But there is a reason that he uses Canon in all his stuff for video. And he does use Sony too. But there's a reason that other people use Canon. It just works. JonnyPink, you guys have a fantastic day out there, whatever it is you're going to do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see you guys out there, man. You have a fantastic day. If you want to come shoot with me, man, just shoot me an email and let's go do it. We'll see you. Another thing I forgot, I'm going to have to do this another time because I'm not getting rid of the Z9 right away unless somebody offers me a lot of money for it. But because then I'll buy more Canon gear. I really want that 800mm lens. I have this video right here. Man, that was so awesome. It's ungodly heavy, and it puts this is tiny compared to that. Anyway, aside from all that, I'm getting lost.